IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we discuss the story of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners. Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Before we get on with today's episode, a big shout out to some of our listeners who have taken time out to write to us. Rajiv Warrior, Manoj Gaud, Lakshmi Dharmarajan. Thank you so much, guys. It's much appreciated. Also, a big shout out to the podcast app Castbox for making it easy for listeners to interact with us. As for this episode, we are really excited to be going back to the Himalayas with our guest Medhavi Gandhi, the founder of Heritage Lab, a unique digital platform for people to interact and connect with the museums. Let's jump into the conversation and find out more. Medhavi, thank you so much for being a part of the Musafir Stories and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Saif. It's entirely my pleasure to be on your podcast. This is my first time. I have to give that disclaimer on a podcast show. So thank you so much. Really excited about this and looking forward.
Thank you so much. Medhavi, the introduction I gave about you is very, very concise and brief. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself and also about your pet project, the Heritage Lab, right? It's a very, very unique concept and perhaps one of a kind in India also, right? So please talk a little bit more about that and tell us its beginnings.
So my parents have been making me travel since I was 3 years old. And so I remember going to museums since I was very little, because when you go abroad, you go to museums. But somehow I have had no memories and no recollections of going to museums in India. And, I thought that was just me, but I asked everyone around me and everyone seemed to be like, oh yeah, once upon a time during school, museums are boring. So those are the typical responses you get. And in my past life, which was just 10 years ago, I founded the Happy Hands Foundation, which again had started on a whim and out of curiosity for Indian crafts and as to why young people like ourselves were not interested or knew even about the different kind of arts and crafts of the country. So,
Sure.
Yeah, and it's just that it happened that I was conducting this fellowship where we were setting up a traveling museum for Hampi. And which is when the whole idea struck around making museums more engaging for children and connecting museums with history curriculums in schools. So, and it's been a wonderful journey since been a couple of years only now. But we've run some wonderful international campaigns, digital campaigns where museums have participated in, very interesting or very engaging concepts like Ask a Curator, where anybody on Twitter can sort of reach out to a museum curator and ask them questions. And questions can be something like, show me something pink from your collection. Or what do you even do? How does one become a curator? So these things that you're otherwise shy of asking. So the Heritage Lab basically has become that bridge between, and we've always said we are a bridge between citizens and museums, but we're more visitor-led rather than being more, it's not a more museum to citizen approach, but a more visitor to museum approach. So yeah, that's a little about me and the work that I do.
Yeah, that's marvelous. And I think I should say hats off to you because I completely agree. Even going back to the days I was in school or growing up, right, essentially, we usually frown upon a little bit because we don't have that culture as much, right? Visiting museums and finding out about things within the museums. And I think it's perhaps just related to the way the whole school system and everything is set up, that not enough importance is given to such things. There's no element of storytelling and stuff like that to make things in the museum interesting for kids, right? So I think it's a great initiative, and in kind of making this digital and also in certain ways cool, right? Making it more interactive, making them more accessible. I think you guys are doing a great job, and hopefully this will catch up. Before we dive into the topic of discussion today, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the personality we'll be speaking about today as well, Medhavi.
Right, absolutely. So I'm going to talk about Nicholas Roerich. Roerich was actually a Russian artist, but he shouldn't just be known as an artist. He's so many things put into one. He's a poet, a traveler in his own right. I mean, yes, he's known for his travels and expeditions. He's a philosopher and so many other things, but he's one of India's 9 treasure artists. He's at some of the most prominent museums in the country as well. Museums like the National Gallery of Modern Art and the Chandigarh Museum of Art, which is also where I first discovered him. Like I said, I wasn't a museum visitor per se. And we're going to talk about Nicholas Roerich and his Himalayan expedition, during which he created more than 500 paintings. We're also fond of the mountains, and we all hear the mountains calling constantly. So I just thought that this will be wonderful to share his journey of the mountains.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for actually proposing this topic or this expedition of Nicholas Roerich to be covered, right? Because it's very unique in one way. It's literally connecting travel, the mountains and museums, all of them together, and art, of course, the beautiful paintings that Nicholas Roerich made. And basically what Nicholas Roerich did was, on his expedition, he painted out all these beautiful sights and sceneries that he saw, right? I think that's so unique, and we're speaking about close to 100 years ago, right?
Absolutely. He died in 1947, but before that, he has been traveling across India since 1923. I think that's when he first landed in Darjeeling. And since then, he took a while to go around Central Asia. But for the purpose of our conversation, I'll focus on his 5 to 8 years on the the Indian Himalayan expedition. So it was a while back, and he was so ahead of his times, I think.
Absolutely. And also, just to set context up for this expedition, right? If you could just share the motive behind this expedition, because he set out on a very different cause of a sort, right? It was not just about exploring the Himalayas. It was something more than that.
Right. So, for Nicholas Roerich, he was taken, because his interest in philosophy, he was taken by the concept of Shambhala. We've all heard of Shangri-La. Like the chain of restaurants, but that's actually a take on the name Shambhala. And Shambhala is like the promised land in a way. It was for Shambhala that the Roerichs traveled through the mountains to find this unknown kingdom. And you can't say that he was taken by an idea. His wife, Helena Roerich, is into spiritual study. They had enough reason to believe that there lay a certain spiritual force in the Himalayas, and they just wanted to get to know that and discover that. So it was this unusual thirst for knowledge that they had, and that led them to undertake this tedious journey. Because let's sort of take into effect that they're traveling at a time where there are no modes of transport per se.
Sure.
So they're traveling on horses and mules, whatever they can find locally, and they're walking through these spaces with their children. That's his motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. So just referencing upon that, as you mentioned, Shambhala is that mythical kingdom, right, that the Roerichs started out looking for.
Yeah.
And I think it's believed in a lot of cultures, right, prominently the Tibetan culture, that there is this kingdom where when we reach a point in time in the world when evil will take over good, at that point, the king from this kingdom will defeat the evil and then help spread harmony and peace in the world. So I think that's the promised land, like you said, that's mentioned, and that's what the Roerichs were seeking to find out. And to draw out some context, this was done back in 1923, as you said, and it was an expedition of over, I think, 25,000 kilometers spread over about 5 to 8 years. They started off from India, and it wasn't without challenges, because I think we were at a time where India was still being ruled by the British, and then even the hostilities between, say, Britain and Russia and everybody, they were at their peak. So I think there were a lot of conspiracy theories as well going around while the Roerichs were setting out on this journey, that maybe this is an espionage mission and stuff like that. So all of that makes this journey even more interesting and intriguing.
Absolutely, because he was also very closely associated with American bodies at that point of time. So there was this speculation that, is he a Russian spy? Is he an American spy? What is happening? So yeah, he faced all of that, but I think his motive was to create peace, and peace through culture, because that's what he's again known for, the Roerich Pact, which was again an international understanding that culture should be protected, whether in times of war or peace. And
Wonderful. So I think we have set this up really well now, and it's time to dive into his expedition and see what are the different places that he ventured to on this expedition, and also touch upon the beautiful paintings that he made on these expeditions. Medhavi, why don't you just roughly draw out his route of this expedition, and then we'll touch upon some of the works that he did during this expedition too.
So actually his expedition was all of Central Asia. Now it stretches all the way from Kashmir to Tibet and covers all of these regions, and that the route is actually there in his travelogue Altai Himalaya. But just for the purpose of the Indian route, what we've taken in is how he starts from Darjeeling and goes up till Kashmir. Also goes into what today is Pakistan's part of the Himalayas. So he comes on from Darjeeling to Sikkim. And from Sikkim, he goes towards the mountains, towards the Kailash range, comes towards Lahaul and Spiti area. And he crosses into Ladakh. And from Ladakh, he moves into Srinagar. He moves from Srinagar into, the further territories of Kashmir. Finally, he comes to settle down in Kullu. He decides to make that his home, Naggar in Kullu. And his home is still there in Naggar. So if visitors are ever traveling, they should definitely stop by and go to his little abode.
Definitely. And I think this is what is a museum now, right?
Yes, it's a museum. It's run by the Naggar Trust. There is a trust that they take care of the house. The paintings are there. His belongings are there. So yes, it's a small museum. It's not a museum in the sense of, it has 10 galleries or something. It's not like that. It's a house museum mostly. Yeah.
Sure. Cool. And as you mentioned, he pretty much traversed through Sikkim, Kashmir, Ladakh, and those were the important places in India. But outside of that, even to other countries, right? Like Tibet at that time, then even Mongolia and stuff like that. And I think he stopped over in the Soviets too for some time, through going through Serbia. So it was a very, very long drawn expedition that he set out on. And I think this was with his wife and his son, along with a few other companions. As it is, doing a journey on this scale back in the day is an achievement in itself. But what stood out even more was these brilliant paintings he made, right? Traveling in itself is a challenge in these, a lot of these terrains, but he managed to capture them literally on the canvas, right? So that's what we want to touch upon a little bit today. Why don't you call out some of these important works? We'll obviously try and link to as many of his works as possible so people can actually go out and check out his work. Medhavi, in your words, why don't you draw out some of these paintings and touch upon the kind of work too, because I am not a big connoisseur of art or anything, but still for a layman also, these are really marvelous paintings that he's done. So why don't you just touch upon those, Medhavi?
Sure. So I think one, it is important to mention that throughout his life, he made more than 7,000 paintings and sketches. But the Himalayan paintings are one of his, most popular works. And what is beautiful about these is that, there is a painting in which the mountain appears purple. The first time I saw it, I was wondering, mountain isn't purple. Has he imagined that color? Realized that it's the light that he would have waited for, because a mountain would change colors, reflect off colors of the sun at different points of the day. So, what is fascinating about any Roerich painting is to notice the presence of the sun in the painting.
Sure.
Like you'll see in any painting. So, for example, there's a painting called Remember, though it is part of the collection of the Roerich Museum in New York. A part of the painting is lit up. So suddenly you can't, you know that the sun is somewhere, but he's not drawn the sun. You can see the shadows, you can see it all, but you can't see the sun. There is again another painting in which he sort of gives us a view from Tiger Hill of the Kanchenjunga. So you see the sun rise and reflect across on the mountain. And this is something, photographers try to capture even today. It would have been so challenging for Roerich at that time to take in the colors and then reproduce them, and when I actually do this museum walk with my class for students, it's more about the resources of the mountain. And it's interesting to bring out the fact that Roerich actually colored and used powdered mineral rocks that he would collect. During his expedition, he would collect these mineral rocks, and then, the powdered versions he would use to, that would give his painting that, not that glossy, that matte finish. Instead of it having an oil shine or anything, it would give a matte effect. You're looking at his paintings, you can actually think of the different kind of minerals and rocks and colors that you would found in the mountains itself. And as he traveled, it wasn't just the mountains per se. He was looking at people, but he was also looking at the landscape in terms of architecture. So a lot of paintings have, reflect the houses and styles of houses. And that again, even the monasteries. So for example, he does have a painting of the Tashiding monastery in Sikkim. It gives you a very different, you've never seen stupa like monastery kind of structures. It's very interesting for younger people, for laymen to understand, that is mountain architecture. It predominantly consists of stupas, for example, or houses of a certain type. So yeah, I think that was one thing that pulled me towards his paintings, and the traditions that he sort of showed in his paintings, like festivals or monks dancing or legends. In fact, there is an entire series that he did, which is again a popular series, but it was basically called Banners of the East. Banners of the East basically is the series basically showcases all different spiritual or religious leaders. So you have the prophet, you have the second Buddha, which is Padmasambhava. You have Christ, you have different religious leaders. There's also Krishna, I think, in one of the paintings. So he does, bring about these kind of local customs, etc., from wherever he's traveling also. And yeah, that just forms his entire journey. When you're seeing, you realize that he had gone through all sorts of regions as you cross from Darjeeling in that side where there's a predominant Buddhist belief, but in the middle also crosses the Mount Kailash and all, which is again an abode for Hinduism, and again move towards Leh Ladakh, where again the Buddhist belief takes in. So he's looking at different kind of religious and spiritual cultures also as he travels.
Absolutely. You are very right in calling out about the diversity of his paintings, right? Just because he's traversing the Himalayas, it doesn't mean that it's only of landscapes and mountains and stuff like that. Like you said, a lot of the monasteries, the Lamairu monastery as well, right? I think he's captured in one of his paintings. That was also very beautiful. But along with that, even about a painting which depicted the, is that the Maitreya Buddha? Is that what it's called?
Right. It's the Maitreya Buddha. Correct.
A sculpture, right?
It's a sculpture that's inside a mountain. It's still there, like when you're on your way to Kargil,
right.
From Srinagar to Leh on that route.
Right.
A lot of people have spotted the Maitreya Buddha even today, and I've seen it in a lot of these TripAdvisor photos. And when I saw Roerich's painting, I was like, oh my God, this is the same one. So I actually went looking for that
Exactly.
particular image. So it's actually on an old trade route near a
Mm-hmm.
particular monastery. But yeah, it's an old trade route that he's taken. And again, in that you see there is a devotee in that painting kneeling down and praying. Well, today I think on that road there is no space for a devotee to stop by and pray, but yes, that's what paintings do to you. You time travel basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. And I think apart from that, even a lot of these Buddhist sculptures that were made on boulders, literally, right, on the rocks along the Zanskar range, those have been very well captured in some of his paintings. Then I think one of them that stood out for me was this beautiful painting of a waterfall. Is this Sisu? Yeah, the Sisu waterfall, right? And Buddhist monks who are by the waterfall and praying. I think that's also a very unique kind of picture.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. In fact, that has a story also. That there's a
Hmm.
story associated with that one. So this waterfall is a little of the Leh Manali highway, and this is a region where you see a lot of thankas and a lot of murals and statues of the Guru Padmasambhava, who's the second Buddha. Now,
Hmm.
he would have traveled that side, but as per legend, there was a monk at one of the monasteries in Lahore who gained a lot of knowledge and became very proud and egoistic about that knowledge that he had gained. Now, one day,
Okay.
he happens to insult a senior spiritual teacher who sort of
Okay.
then expels him from the monastery. Now, initially, he wanders around the valley, and one day, just thinking of the insult and not being able to bear the memory of it, he jumps into the river. Now, it is said that his spirit started haunting and troubling all the local travelers and people who were passing by. So everybody got together and invited the monks of Lahore to perform this ceremony and free themselves of the spirit of the lama, like this person. That is when I saw this particular painting where the Buddhist monks are returning from Lahore and they stopped by and they're doing some kind of a ceremony. It's
Right.
as if they're actually trying to free someone's soul or something. It's almost like that. You never know if that is, but it definitely does give you a reminder to a certain legend like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's what is great about like some of these paintings also, that there is so much context, and that's like a third dimension of these paintings, right?
Absolutely.
But any painting that is your favorite or that really stands out for you, Medhavi?
Yes, for me, I think the one that is at the Allahabad Museum of Goga Chauhan and Narsingh, the many, they're two of the many mountain deities that he came across.
Okay.
And these are just outside his house. So
Hmm.
for me, because I had been to his house before I saw the painting. So for me, it was almost surreal to see it again. It was like, I have seen this. I have actually seen the space outside his house where Narsingh and Goga Chauhan rest outside a tree. Though now there are a lot of other things that have added to that part. But that particular painting it's got that lovely purple yellow light, and it's just beautiful, that particular painting. And again, there is a whole legend around Goga Chauhan and Narsingh and why the mountain deities, why they believe in the protection of them. So I think I can't be too sure, but what I remember someone telling me in Nagar is that he found these while he was making his home, and he was also told about the legend. So he placed them right outside to take care and protect his space. And I think that might just be true, because long after he's gone, they're right there looking after him and his house and his legacy. But like you said, Saif, I have to agree. Any painting can be seen through any perspective, and it's just about what you love doing. So if you love to travel, for you, a painting can be travel goals, #travel goals, or for a science teacher, it can be about these minerals and how you get this. For a painter or artist, these are inspiration. In fact, we've actually had someone tell us about how photographers can get inspired by museum paintings and learn from them. So, and then there are, for little children or for anybody who enjoys legends and myths and stories, you can take up any painting and then go on right from there, give it a bit of a visual. So yeah, I think museums are wonderful places and definitely a starting point for anybody to start exploring a place, whether it is a city or whether it is a region. I think go to a museum and there's a whole lot of discovery you start doing. There's a lot of context setting to any travel.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, at least travel enthusiasts should flock to the museums. Yeah.
I definitely concur with that, and they're often overlooked about. I think they're definitely a treasure trove, right? Of not just information about the past, but also so much more context around the things that were going on. I encourage more and more people to definitely have museums on your list of things to check out when you go to a new city or a new town. And just getting back quickly to Roerich's expedition. So. Yeah, this was his time spent in India, and as we said, over a period of 5 to 8 years, he traveled across some of the other Central Asian countries as well. And one little tidbit I also came across was that he and his whole entourage was held up in Tibet for about 5 to 6 months, literally detained of sorts, right? So I don't know if you came across that, but that was something interesting I came across too, that people thought that he is an outsider and he's there not with good intentions, like he has something else like a spy mission or things like that going on. So he was detained for a while and he literally survived those 5 months. Also read that about 4 or 5 people from his troop, they lost their lives too, because the conditions that they lived in were so rigid and it was so cold, the kind of weather they had to live in. So he went through all of that and finally made his journey back to India.
Right.
And he finally settled down in Nagar. That's in Kullu, you said?
Yes. It's between Kullu and Manali, a little off. So Nagar falls under Kullu district. That's where he settled in. And in fact, there is also a place in Bangalore. I mean, because in their old age, they moved from Nagar to Bangalore and they stayed there. But that didn't turn out too well because now their house in Bangalore is under a legal tussle, and it's not very cared for or looked after. And a lot of their paints and things seem to have survived from there. But yeah. So you're also in one of the places which has Roerich memories.
Yeah, that's true. And it's, I think, one of the long-drawn legal battles that also have been going on. So the context is that I think it was his son, perhaps. I can't remember if it was his son or grandson. I think it was his son. He was married to Devika Rani, a popular actress of the yesteryears. Right. So they were married, and it was called the Tata Guni Estates, where they had like a big estate with a lot of Roerich's collection, like his paintings and everything. And both Roerich's son and Devika Rani, they passed away, I think, 93, 94, somewhere around that time. And after that, there was a lot of issues around the will, and the legal battle has drawn on forever. And I think paintings worth lakhs. I think that's what they estimated it at that time. But they were all stolen, and some of them were actually found out later that they were sold abroad also, right?
Yes, which is illegal because Roerich is a treasure artist, and that's because his son and his wife, they had moved to Bangalore. They had also taken some of the most important, I mean, not all of the most important ones, because the Nagar house still has some important paintings. But, it was a move and they decided this is precious, so let's take this and move to Bangalore. So some of the more precious things have been lost from there.
Very unfortunate, but it continues to I think there's no closure to it even now. That's what I read last, and I think the least we can hope is at least they finally recover these paintings and bring them back to where they belong, right? That's the best we can do. But also tell us about where one can find Roerich's paintings in India.
So in India, I think definitely at the Allahabad Museum, the Roerich Trust Naggar. You'll
Hmm.
also find some paintings at the Baroda Museum and Picture Gallery. Then there's the Bharat Kala Bhavan in Varanasi. And then they
Hmm.
have the biggest collection is at the National Gallery of Modern Art in Delhi. And
Hmm.
of course, those coming to Chandigarh, we do have a small collection here as well. But yes, the National Gallery of Modern Art I think, has the largest collection of all of these. And then there's a Chitrakala Parishad in Bangalore also.
Sure.
But the collections keep rotating, so it's not always that you go into a museum and that painting happens to be there. So it's always advisable to sort of check what is on display and what is not before visiting.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll definitely put out, as I said at the beginning as well, that we'll put out links to where one can find Roerich's paintings in India as well. But before that, I would strongly urge and recommend our listeners to go check out the Heritage Lab, which is Medhavi's baby, if I can call it, where she has kind of documented a lot of these brilliant paintings that are done by Roerich, and also has brief write-ups about some context to those paintings as well, and the legends associated with those paintings too. So you can go check those out, get inspired, and then you can experience them for real. That's I think the next best thing to going to the Himalayas. So it's been a wonderful experience, very unique also for us, because this is not your regular travel itinerary that we usually talk of like on most of our episodes. This is very, very different, and the whole mystery around it, the connection to Shambala, as well as the time that it was done in, almost 100 years ago, the length of this whole expedition, as well as the events that were associated to it. All of that, and in spite and despite of all of that, he comes up with 500 magnificent, mind-blowing paintings. So that's what was so brilliant and literally out of the world for me. And thank you, Medhavi, for coming on board and sharing this experience so wonderfully. But before we let you go, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what is up and coming for the Heritage Lab? What new projects are you looking at for this new year?
Thank you so much for again having me on this and trusting me enough to do this on your show. This has been absolutely lovely. So what is up and coming is one of our most cherished endeavors, which is art and feminism. It's actually a campaign which sort of focuses on women in the arts and increasing content about them on Wikipedia. Because that's where all information by default gets pulled from. And, when there's not enough information, women just end up getting ignored. And so in the last few years, we've added a lot of women artists from India. But in the meantime, just to keep in touch over everything that is happening at the Heritage Lab, or to get a glimpse into museums every day, because we call it #museums every day. Do visit us on Instagram. It'll be great to connect. If there is any particular painting or any particular artist or any particular city that anybody wants to travel to, there's always a nice painting and a story for it, I feel. Yeah, that is what is happening in the world of the Heritage Lab right now. Apart from us wanting and wishing and hoping that we can come up with our own podcast series someday, but yes, that is what is up and coming.
Wonderful. And yeah, we will include all of these in the show notes section, so listeners can go check out the social media handles of the Heritage Lab as well. And as far as the podcast is concerned, you always have us at your service. We're very happy to help you out in any way possible to help launch a podcast that I'm very sure will be brilliant. And thank you so much, Medhavi. We look forward to the podcast and look forward to more brilliant initiatives and projects on the Heritage Lab. Thank you so much for being on the Musafir Stories.
Thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure.
That was yet another great episode of the Musafir Stories. If you guys like the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Audioboom, Savan, Pocket Casts, Castbox, Stitcher, or any other podcasting app available on iOS or Android. Please do leave us a review on iTunes. It goes a long way in the show's discoverability. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We go by the handle The Musafir Stories. Or, if it suits you, you could email us at themusafirstories@gmail.com or visit our website at www.themusafirstories.com for more information. All of these links will be made available in the show notes section of each episode. So here's to more traveling, sharing, and inspiring. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, happy travels and goodbye.